What is up, everybody? This is Danny Rocksteady. Thanks for checking out another episode. There's a lot of projects that I've been putting off, mainly because of time, because of how big this project is going to be. And so the goal is to tackle it all today. We are going to be wrapping the roof of the Rav4, which consists of removing the Prince rack. The rack stuff is going to be a whole separate video. The main video, which will be this one, will be the roof rack being wrapped. I'm headed out to Home Depot real quick to grab some last minute stuff that I need to get started and some breakfast because it's going to be a long day, and I will see you guys on the other side. Peace. First thing we're going to do today is remove the rack from the top of the Rav4. If you look closely in here, you can see I've already started removing most of the bolts. If your rack install went anything like mine, then the two rear plus nuts ended up spinning on you. So I got mine pretty tight to where it was secure, but it's definitely the kind of thing now, if I try to rotate this up here, it starts to just spin out. I do have some replacement plus nuts that I plan on installing while we have the rack off, but in order to do that, we're going to have to go back inside and drop the headliner, at least at the rear, so that we can access those. Since we're back here, as you can see, I have my Boss Base 10 compact amp and sub. I have this run up to my new head unit up there. That'll be a whole different video, so stay tuned for that. To get to the plus nuts up here, we're gonna have to remove some of these panels here, and so I'll get on that right now and then touch bases with you guys. All right, so quick status update. Got the roof rack off. The biggest pain in the ass was definitely getting the rear plus nuts off, since they were the plus nuts themselves weren't gripping the bottom of the roof, so it was spinning. So what I had to do, I got a pair of these vice grip pliers. I gripped the bottom of the plus nut and then loosened the bolts on this end to help kind of push the plus nuts to expand them again, so I can actually remove them. I threaded one of the bolts back through, took a small hammer and just barely started tapping on it a little bit to help drive the bolt back down through the plus nut to push and expand the plus nut again, and then that way it's not so flush to the bottom of the roof, and you can use pliers to fully expand them, to remove them or cut them off, whatever you need to do. And then I have replacement plus nuts right here. So as you can see, after 2 years, definitely collected a lot of dust around the silicone. I'm going to go ahead and peel all of this off and clean it up. And then this is what I have been using the last 2 years on top of the body plugs that I had installed, were these Flex Seal type tape. I trimmed them down to fit this channel, and then I ran it along here. So you can see it's definitely held up the entire time. I have had no leaks or any issues like that. But now I'm going to go ahead and peel this off, remove it all, clean it up, and that way, instead of having to use this, it's going to be the actual vinyl wrap that we're going to place on top of here. That's going to be the second layer barrier on here when it's all said and done. As you can see, the roof is a little bit dirty, so we're going to go ahead and clean it up and prep it a little bit more so that the adhesive from the vinyl wrap will stick a little better. So here's a little bit of a status update. I've spent the last few hours now just prepping the top of the roof up here. As you can see, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done in the channels. I had to pull up the flex tape that I had up here and clean out the channels. I still have quite a bit of adhesive to clean up. Next step is I'm going to have to actually remove the shark fin antenna so that I don't have to worry about unique shapes that I'll have to wrap around this. Once I remove it, I'm just going to plasti dip it with a matte black plasti dip, so that way I don't have to try to wrap around this shape. The rack itself is going to be going through a bit of a conversion. I have a new Roam box that I'll be mounting onto here. And as you can see, the interior is just completely disheveled because I am working on rewiring this and cleaning up some of the wiring in the back. And so let me get a little bit more work done, and then I will check back in with you guys. A man that needs no introduction. We got John DZ here.
Rav4 people don't know me.
Oh, dude, I'm sure most of these guys follow you already. Yeah.
And chicks.
And so he's helping me get this laid out. It's definitely a lot easier to have two people manipulate this 10 by 5 piece of vinyl than trying to do it yourself. And so the plan is, what's the plan, John?
So this isn't quite lining up with the A-pillars, but if you cut it down the middle, then you can have this flare out. And after you do that, you will have enough, you'll be able to cover everything, because the windshield doesn't need to be covered.
Yeah, and as you can see, it is just enough to be able to cover all the way to the back.
I've on-wrapped my entire car. It took me 10 hours, did it mostly by myself, and I know the struggle, so I reached out. This would be the biggest panel I've ever tried to on-wrap. So letting you know, I'll know right now, but I think we'll do it just fine.
What's up, guys? So it's day 3 of this install now. Yesterday, John DZ and my buddy Josh came by and they helped me out. Definitely was a lot of a learning curve yesterday. John DZ was a huge help. If you don't follow him on YouTube, make sure you check him out. He's wrapped his Honda Passport in this cool tactical green textured wrap, which looks really nice. And he came over and was kind enough to share his experience so that we were able to get this done a lot faster. What I'm working on right now is I'm cleaning up some of the A-pillars, because last night, by the time we got the roof and the A-pillars wrapped, just completely exhausted. There was no way I was gonna be able to take the time to do all of this stuff and get all of this trimmed up. And so that I could get to work today, like as I mentioned, it's Monday already. I just put masking tape on a bunch of things to try to keep the flaps and edges down so that I could finish all the trimming, more of it anyway, right now as I'm on my lunch break. But the job's got to get done, right? And so there was definitely a lot of things I learned yesterday throughout the process, and a lot of stuff I want to share with you guys, just because if this is something that you're considering doing on your own, there's definitely some things that you could do just so that you're not learning from your own mistakes. You're able to learn from my mistakes. One of the things that really helped us out yesterday was doing this outside in the sun. We're here in Southern California, so luckily, even though it is now October, we still have some of the warm summer-like weather coming through the area, and having that sun definitely helped allowing us to it allowed us to manipulate the vinyl a lot easier, especially for a big panel like the roof, versus having to rely on something like a heat gun. So having a reliable source of heat is very important to be able to manipulate the vinyl. On Saturday when John and I, again, huge shout out to John. He came over on Saturday and on Sunday to help me out on this install. By the time we got to do any wrapping, we were relying on the heat gun. I mean, after a few minutes, it got to the point where the ambient temperature was already cooling down. The vinyl started cooling back down and getting hard and difficult to work with. And that's why it was a good thing that we started with just the hatch spoiler first, and then saved the big project, which was the overall roof, for yesterday, Sunday. The downside to using the sun as your heat source is, or just working outside in general when you're doing any type of wrapping job, is the potential to contaminate the adhesive side of the vinyl with dust and things like that from wind blowing it under your material. And also the other downside is that you yourself are going to be working out in the sun. So we were definitely getting a good tan on yesterday. Right now I'm cleaning up the A-pillar let me finish up this part, and then I'll give you an overview of what's going on with the wrap. I dressed the edges along the top of the roof and the top of the windshield, and I also cleaned up the A-pillars. I trimmed this down and then tucked it under the plastic down here. Here's a quick look at what the top looks like. As you can see, the heat definitely helped us be able to manipulate this large sheet a lot easier. As you can see, we did a fair job of making sure everything is covered. There are a few little air bubbles and things like that, but this one is probably doomed, but there's a lot of little ones that we can clean up. Some of the things that you want to keep in mind when you're using heat and stretching the material is that there's definitely a limit to how much you can stretch. You don't want to overstretch the material, because as it cools off, it's going to contract and you're going to end up, the vinyl is going to end up pulling. So especially if you have very fine margins at the end, and you did that with a very stretched piece of material, when the material cools and contracts, there's a good chance you're going to have paint exposed from the vinyl pulling back and returning to shape. But I'll give you guys more of a look at what's going on up here, and especially towards the back on the next segment of this video, just because I have to get back to work. But so far it looks good. I've been able to check out what the top looks like from the security camera up there, so I got a nice view of what it looks like from the top, and I really like what the black looks like on top of the blue flame. So at this stage, let me know in the comments what you guys think of what the black top looks like so far. Let me know what your thoughts are. I really like how it blends in with the chrome delete I got going on here with the auto clover window rain guards. As you can see, it's all black, but I'll give you guys a final look in a second. See you in a bit. And of course, of all the days for there to be a random rainstorm, it's the day that I still don't have the rack put back on. I didn't want the inside to get wet, so I tried taping it off with some painter's tape, but from the level of storm that we're getting intermittently, that painter's tape wasn't going to hold for very long, so I brought it inside. Just my luck. What's up, everyone? So it's been about a week since I started this roof rack project. The wrap itself is done now. I'm going ahead and putting the rack back together. Just wanted to give you a recap on everything that we've done so far. So a couple tips if you want to attempt this on your own. On your Rav4, on the A-pillar over here, this little panel itself actually comes off, so you could pop this off. That way you can make sure all of this edge is laid down before putting the cap back on and kind of dressing it off, as you can see that. For this piece of trim here, I just used a tool to tuck it in. I think this might come off. I didn't bother trying to pull it off. I didn't want to risk breaking anything, but all I did was go ahead and tuck the edge of the vinyl in here. For the spoiler, I did the same kind of thing where I made sure there was enough overlap to go around this, and then I tucked it in between the plastic, the black plastic, and the painted plastic up here, and that's how I was able to get the back all tucked in and looking fairly clean. Along in here, what I originally wanted to do was use some of the knifeless tape and line it up here. Ended up getting too far into the project to where I didn't really get time to apply it properly. I took a sharp blade and I just carefully ran it along here using I just kind of used my finger to guide the edge, and then held the blade nice and firm and kept it nice and steady, and just pulled it across this way like this, and then I was able to get a fairly clean line. As you can see, it's nice and tucked in there. Same with the front, all the way. For the shark fin antenna here, I just plasti dipped it, put a few layers of plasti dip just so that it matched black and I didn't have to try to wrap this. And so you have to remove this. So while I had the headliner down to redo some of the Prince rack stuff, I went ahead and removed this. There's just a single bolt holding this in. You remove that bolt and you're able to pull this straight out after you unplug it. So you can see the top came out pretty clean. The channels are still currently blue. I'm going to go back through and lay some more vinyl down the middle to kind of cover this up, and that way I can cover up the body plugs that I used to plug these holes, and these have held up pretty well. I've had no issues. Just make sure you apply a good amount of silicone. I would highly recommend, if you're going to wrap your roof, to do it way before you install a Prinsu rack, just because it is such a pain to remove it. Save yourself some time and some headache by making sure the roof is wrapped before you install a aftermarket rack. For the front up here, along the rubber weather stripping, it's very easy to just kind of tuck the plastic in. One of the most invaluable tools that I used for this project was one of these. I'll link in the description below where you can get one of these on Amazon, and it's just a simple plastic tool that will help you get into the edges, especially like around weather stripping and things like that, to help press down the vinyl around, again, weather stripping and edges where you can't tuck your finger in. I highly recommend using one of these, as well as obviously the squeegee to apply the big flat panels. For the Prinsu rack, I removed it all as one piece, so I unbolted them from the roof, and I left all of the crossbars on there, because one of the things that I have noticed with these Prinsu racks is the bolts, especially after a year and a half or two of being out in the sun and just kind of corroding. It's almost impossible to get these off unless you pre-treated the bolts with some kind of grease or something like that before you put them in. So another tip, if you are going to be installing one of these Prinsu racks, make sure you apply some grease to these bolts before installing them. That way down the line, if you have to remove them or make any adjustments, you can take them off. Otherwise, there's a good chance they'll seize, and then you'll just end up breaking the bolt head off trying to remove these, which is something that happened to one of the bolts that I had. And so as you can see in there, bolt head pretty much broke off, and I was able to get the other ones off, but obviously there was a casualty, and so I had to reach out to Prinsu, and I had to get a new extrusion bar. From here, I'm gonna gear up the rack and bolt everything back on. As you can see, I already have my screws in the channel over there for the chase lights. I'm gonna go ahead and rewire everything. That'll be a separate video, so I just wanted to show you guys what this looks like right now. As you can see, I am very happy with how it came out. It definitely gives it a much more aggressive look overall. Gives it kind of that premium XSE vibe. With the rack itself, it just makes it look super good. So let me know in the comments below what you guys think. A huge shout out to Vvivid Vinyl for supplying some of the materials that I needed to get this install done. Definitely wouldn't have been able to do it without their support. That being said, the material that I use here will be linked in the description below. You could get a whole roll of 10 feet by 5 feet of their premium satin material that I used on this install on Amazon right now for about 65 bucks. So it's a hell of a deal. I mean, as long as you're willing to put in a little bit of time, as I said, I mean, I've been working on this for about a week here and there. You're able to get a nice looking wrap done for less than 100 bucks. And so this is Danny Rocksteady checking out. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.